I remember the night so clearly, though it feels like it was a lifetime ago. The fog rolled in thick and heavy, curling around the twisted trees like ghostly fingers, and every shadow seemed to breathe. I was walking along a narrow path through the woods, the ground soft and muffled under my feet, when the lights of the distant crossroads flickered, pale, unnatural, like lanterns swaying in the wind, though no wind touched them. A low humming filled the air, almost imperceptible, vibrating through my chest and my teeth, a sound I couldn't place. Somewhere far off, a door creaked open, or maybe it was just the wind, but I felt drawn toward it, against reason. Each step made the fog swirl differently, and in that shifting gray, I thought I saw a figure, tall, still, just beyond the edge of the light. My heart slowed, then skipped, then sank. That's when I saw it, a shadow not quite human, waiting at the crossroads where no one should be. The forest was quiet. Thick fog clung to the ground, curling around my ankles. Every branch above seemed to hold its breath. The path beneath me was soft, almost damp, muffling each step. A pale light shimmered ahead. A lantern, alone, swaying slightly as if caught in a sigh. I slowed. The air pressed against my chest, still heavy. It wasn't wind. It was waiting. Shadows stretched long and thin, reaching toward me like fingers. I thought I saw someone standing there. Just beyond the lantern's glow, when I blinked, nothing. The figure vanished. Only the fog remained, curling around the roots and rocks, hiding secrets I could not name. The silence thickened. My own breathing felt loud. Each exhale rattled in my ears. I moved closer. Soft footsteps in the underbrush whispered after me, then stopped. Nothing stirred but the fog and the faint hum, low, constant, almost like it was coming from the earth itself. The lantern flickered. Shadows twisted around it, bending unnaturally. I wanted to look away, to run, but my feet stayed rooted. Something shifted behind me. I turned quickly. Only the fog greeted me. I felt it brush against my arms like cold silk. The forest smelled damp. Rotting leaves, wet soil, and something metallic beneath the hum. I tried to place it. Couldn't. The figure appeared again. Farther, but unmistakable. Pale, still, watching. I tried to focus and it dissolved. Every time I looked, every time I thought I understood, it was gone. I noticed the ground. Twigs broken in patterns I hadn't made. Footprints fading, leaving the earth hungry and empty. I breathed, shallow. The hum pressed closer. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But the forest didn't answer. The lantern swung again, casting shapes that danced like cold flames across the trees. A branch snapped somewhere, not near, not far. It could have been my imagination. It could have been waiting. I pressed forward past the crossroad. Past the lantern. Past the silence that felt alive, heavy on my shoulders. The fog began to thin, revealing familiar trees. Still I felt watched. Still the hum lingered behind my ribs, soft, insistent. I stumbled onto the main path, leaves crunching underfoot. When I glanced back, the lantern was gone. Nothing remained of it. Not even a shadow. By the time I reached my car, the memory clung to me. My chest ached as if I carried the fog inside. I breathed in the night air, but the hum stayed. A whisper, faint, just beneath hearing. I drove away slowly. Every turn of the wheels echoed in the quiet. Every tree I passed seemed taller, darker. And I knew, even now, that some corners of the forest don't want to be left behind. The pines towered above me. Their trunks stretched straight and endless, fading into fog. The air smelled of damp needles and earth, thick and heavy. My footsteps barely moved the carpet of fallen needles. The fog swallowed them instantly. I could feel it curling around my ankles, cold, soft, unyielding. Whispers drifted between the trunks. Soft, almost a sigh. I leaned in, trying to catch the words, but they slipped just beyond hearing. Each whisper felt familiar. A name I knew but could not place. It brushed against memory like a finger tracing a scar. Branches creaked. Not with wind. There was no wind. It was the trees themselves, stretching, bending, holding their breath. Shapes shifted in the corner of my eyes. Darkness that moved against darkness. When I looked directly, there was nothing. Nothing but fog, pale and restless. The whispers returned, closer now. One lingered at the edge of my ear, teasing recognition. I turned, heart slow and steady, but the space behind me was empty. The pine needles were damp against my fingers. I crouched and ran them through my hands, shivering at the cold. The smell of earth deepened, metallic now, faint but sharp. I walked further, each step swallowed by silence and fog. The whispers kept pace, sometimes multiple voices, sometimes a single, breathless call. A shadow passed between two trees. No shape, only a movement in the corner of vision. I blinked and it was gone. But the whisper lingered soft, carrying that unreachable name. I paused. The forest felt alive, not alive in the way of wind or birds, but patient. Waiting, listening. The fog thickened. It clung to my hair, my skin, wrapping me in a wet hush. The whispers grew fainter, yet somehow sharper. A name again, a half-remembered sound. I could not place it, could not let it go. My breath felt loud, too loud. I pressed a hand against my chest, feeling it thrum under my fingers. The forest did not move. And yet it was watching. A branch cracked behind me, not near, not far, somewhere within the fog. I turned. Nothing. The shadows moved again, imperceptibly. I thought I saw a figure between the pines, tall, pale still. When I looked directly, it dissolved into mist. The whispers faded gradually, leaving only silence that hummed faintly, pressing against my ears. I moved on slowly, careful. The fog thinned with distance, but the memory of it clung to my skin. By the time I reached the edge of the forest, the whispers were gone. I could still feel the names brushing against my memory, fading, but never quite leaving, and the pines loomed behind me, silent, patient, waiting for the next step. The field stretched before me, pale in the moonlight. Frost clung to the grass, sharp and brittle beneath my fingers. The air smelled faintly of damp earth, heavy with night. A lantern flickered at the edge of the field, alone, small, yet insistent. Its light shivered like a pulse, too deliberate to be wind. I moved closer, each step muffled by the cold grass. Shadows warped around the lantern, bending in ways that made no sense. They leaned, stretched, and recoiled as if alive. A sudden chill brushed the back of my neck. Soft, almost imperceptible. It felt like breath, close, warm against skin I wanted to pull away. The light flickered again, and I realized it pulsed with me. Each heartbeat echoed in the pale glow, matching rhythm, faster, slower, then silence. The shadows froze. The wind did not move. Even the fog seemed suspended, holding its breath. I took a tentative step. The lantern wavered, a shiver of flame in the stillness. The air smelled metallic now, faint, like iron and wet soil. I glanced around, but the field remained empty. Nothing but grass and the horizon, blurred by fog. Yet the feeling of being watched pressed against my shoulders, soft and insistent. The lantern flickered again, rhythm slowing. I felt my own pulse in my ears, each thump a drum in the quiet night. Soft shadows moved at the edges of my vision. I turned quickly. Nothing. A hum rose from somewhere beneath the field, low, constant. It hummed against my ribcage, vibrating through the cold air. I swallowed. My breath came in shallow clouds. I stepped closer to the lantern. Its light was small, fragile, like it might vanish with a sigh. I could see the flame dance, twisting unnaturally as if aware of me. I reached out, hand trembling. The air felt thicker here, sticky, damp. A shadow passed over the grass, too fast, too deliberate. I jerked back, and the lantern flickered violently. Then, nothing. The field was silent. The fog swirled lightly, gentle, almost forgiving. No pulse, no hum, no figure. I lingered, chest tight, feeling the emptiness stretch around me. The lantern's light dimmed, becoming a pale memory at the edge of the field. I stepped away slowly, each footfall soft against frost-crusted earth. By the time I reached the edge of the grass, the lantern had gone. Only the whisper of cold wind remained, brushing against my face. The pulse, the shadow, the hum, they stayed in my chest, and when I glanced back one last time, the field seemed unchanged. Yet I knew in the quiet that some small, flickering thing still watched. The forest floor was littered with dead leaves. They crunched beneath my boots, brittle and damp. The night air was heavy, smelling of moss and wet soil. Fog rolled in thick waves, curling between the trees. It swallowed the path, hiding roots and rocks, hiding shapes I couldn't name. Each step felt smaller, quieter, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Soft footsteps echoed somewhere ahead. Not mine. I stopped. The fog shifted, and I thought I saw a figure. Pale, spectral, flickering just beyond the reach of my eyes. Every time I blinked, it vanished. Each time, it returned, different, closer, impossibly still. I held my breath. The air pressed against my skin, damp and cold. The smell of wet leaves grew stronger, sharp, metallic. Something brushed my arm. Or maybe it was the fog. The footsteps followed, light and deliberate. Rustling leaves whispered under them, forming words I could not hear. I turned slowly, seeing shadows bend unnaturally between the trees. The figure flickered again. More defined this time, but only for a heartbeat, then gone. Yet the feeling remained, watching, patient, silent. I stepped forward cautiously. The fog clung to my clothes, cold and wet, wrapping me in quiet. The forest seemed alive, moving just beyond perception. Branches arched, roots shifted, as if adjusting to my presence. A hum rose, faint, almost imperceptible. It vibrated in my chest, pressing gently but insistently. I tried to place it. Couldn't. Every inhale trembled in my lungs. The figure appeared closer. I blinked, and it split, doubled, then vanished entirely. I was alone. Yet not alone. The leaves whispered under invisible feet. Shadows danced in corners, stretching toward me and recoiling. I shivered, though the night was still. Cold fog brushed my neck again, like a finger trailing down my spine. I paused. The forest waited. Everything held its breath. I took another step. Soft, careful, the fog parted slightly, revealing the faint outline of a tree. But the shadows beyond it twisted and flickered, shifting in impossible patterns. I could feel eyes, or something like eyes, on me. Not just seeing. Pressing. Waiting. I moved slowly, letting each footfall settle into the dead leaves. The footsteps echoed again behind me, ahead of me, everywhere and nowhere. The fog thickened, swallowing the path I thought I knew. The figure appeared one last time. Pale, flickering, untouchable. It seemed to tilt its head at me. Silent, patient, unblinking, then nothing. Only the rustling leaves remained. Only the fog, curling, shifting, waiting. Only my own heartbeat, loud in my ears, trembling against the quiet. I reached the edge of the clearing. The forest seemed empty, though the memory of being watched clung to my skin. My steps carried me forward, slow, careful, leaving the echoes behind. And even now, I can feel it, the figure, the footsteps, the rustling just beyond sight. Waiting. The crossroads lay ahead, empty and silent. Fog curled low, thick and heavy, smelling of damp earth and frost. The trees at the edges leaned inward, their branches scratching at the mist. A dark shape stood in the center, perfectly still. Yet I could feel it breathe. I tried to call out. My voice caught in my throat. Only a shallow, ragged inhale escaped. The fog twisted around the figure, curling like liquid smoke. It swirled and thickened, brushing my cheeks, clinging to my clothes. I could feel the chill bite through the layers, soft and insistent. The silhouette did not move, not a twitch, not a blink. And yet every time I blinked, it seemed closer, closer. Still unmoving, my feet felt heavy. The ground beneath was damp and uneven, leaves sticking to my boots. Every heartbeat echoed too loudly in the quiet. The hum of the night pressed against my ears. Shadows stretched and twisted around the figure. They reached toward me, pale and thin, as if the fog itself had a shape. I wanted to turn, to run, but my legs refused. The air smelled metallic now, faint iron, sharp and bitter. I shivered, though the mist tried to soothe my skin with its damp touch. Every inhale trembled, catching in my throat. I tried to step forward. The silhouette mirrored my steps, or perhaps the fog shifted, tricking me. Each movement brought no change. The figure remained rooted, silent, alive. The crossroads seemed wider than before. The fog thickened, swallowing the edges. My breath came in visible clouds, drifting and fading. The hum of the night deepened, pressing against my chest. I blinked again. It was closer, yet still unmoving. I felt eyes, or something like eyes, watching from every shadowed corner. The silence became alive. Every leaf, every branch seemed to hold a secret. Even the ground beneath whispered against my boots, subtle, relentless. I pressed my hands against my chest. The pulse rattled against the ribs like a warning. The figure remained, patient, unblinking, alive, yet not. I finally forced myself to step back. Fog wrapped around my legs, sticky and cool. Every step felt heavier, yet the crossroads stayed before me. The dark shape did not move. It did not breathe. It simply waited. By the time I reached the edge of the mist, the figure seemed to recede, fading slightly into the fog, but I could still feel it. Watching, patient. And even now, when the night is quiet, I can feel its presence at the edges of memory. A shadow that waits, silent, unmoving. The fog lay thick across the field. Every blade of grass was damp, heavy with night. The air smelled of wet earth, cold and biting. I walked slowly, boots sinking into the softened soil. My breath rose in faint clouds. The mist swallowed every sound, muffling the world around me. Then I saw them. Eyes glowing faintly in the distance. Too high, too still. Nothing I knew could be watching from that height. They tracked me, silently. Unblinking, a shiver ran down my spine. The fog curled around my legs like cold silk. Every step forward felt heavier. The grass pressed against my fingers, damp, clinging. I heard it then, breathing, soft, behind me. Not mine, not steady. I turned slowly, but the mist remained empty. The eyes had multiplied. Now a dozen pairs, all fixed on me, silent, patient, watching. The fog thickened, swallowing the path I had come from. It pressed against my skin, cold, damp, relentless. The metallic scent of the earth grew sharper, bitter in my nose. Shadows flickered between the eyes. Movement that wasn't movement. Shapes bending, twisting, impossible. I stopped. My heart thudded in my chest, loud against the quiet night. The hum of the world, or maybe the fog itself, pressed against my ears. I could feel it vibrating in my bones. The eyes shifted slightly as if acknowledging me, closer, farther, all at once. I couldn't tell where they ended or the mist began. I swallowed. The damp air filled my lungs, icy, heavy. A soft rustling brushed past my arm. Or maybe it was the fog, slipping, folding against my skin. I tried to move, but my feet felt rooted. Every heartbeat echoed in the field, matching the pulse I imagined in the eyes. I forced another step, careful, slow. The eyes multiplied again, high, low, all around. The fog seemed alive, shifting, folding in and out of itself. Breath pressed against my neck, soft, close, not mine. I turned fully. Still nothing but fog. But the eyes remained, counting, watching. I stepped back, each footfall soft, cautious. The field stretched endlessly, pale and damp under the mist. The air felt thick, pressing against my chest. Even as I walked away slowly, the eyes lingered in memory. High in the mist, unblinking, patient. And I knew even now that they follow. Silent, waiting. The path was narrow, winding between tall trees. The leaves were damp beneath my feet, soft and heavy. The air smelled of moss and wet bark, thick, pressing. I walked slowly. Every turn felt familiar, though I had never been here. The path twisted back on itself. Over and over, a loop I could not escape. Shadows pressed closer, stretching between the trunks. The fog swirled low, curling around my ankles. Every step made the world smaller, tighter, suffocating. Branches scraped softly overhead. Rustling leaves whispered in the damp air. I paused, listening, but the forest held only silence. The road shifted beneath my gaze. I turned, and the trees seemed to have moved. Not far, not near, but something was different. I couldn't place it, and my chest tightened. My hands brushed the bark of a tree, cold, rough, wet. The fog smelled sharper here, metallic, like the earth itself was warning me. I took another step. The path bent. I recognized it. Familiar corners, familiar bends, but I knew I had never walked here. My mind stumbled over itself. Had I ever left home? The trees leaned inward, pressing closer with every step. The fog swirled between their trunks like pale smoke. My breath caught in my throat, shallow and fast. The ground felt soft, almost spongy, every footfall muffled. The wind did not move. Yet the branches creaked as if alive, bending toward me, leaning closer. I spun around, hoping to find an end. The path twisted back on itself again. I was in the same place, or a place just like it. The fog pressed in, damp and suffocating, clinging to my skin. Soft footsteps echoed somewhere behind me. I turned. Nothing moved. Only the trees, still and patient, watching. The road stretched endlessly. Every bend led me back. The air felt heavier, thick with damp and shadow. My hands trembled as I reached out, touching nothing but fog and bark. I leaned forward, trying to remember a path I knew. But the road shifted again, loops folding over themselves. I felt trapped in a quiet, endless maze. The forest smelled sharp now, wet soil and iron, pressing into my senses. Every inhale trembled, every exhale caught. I shivered, alone, aware of nothing but the pressing fog. I tried to call out. My voice broke, small and weak. The path swallowed it instantly. No answer, I walked on slowly, careful, soft. Every turn led me back to the same stretch of trees, the same bend, the same fog. Time felt suspended. The road had no end. By the edge of my vision, shadows flickered. The branches twisted, reaching, leaning, patient. I pressed on. Every step felt familiar. Yet everything was wrong. And even now, when I close my eyes, I can feel the road beneath my feet. The fog curling around my ankles. The trees pressing in, waiting. A path that leads nowhere. And maybe I never left. The fog hung low between the trees. The ground was damp, soft beneath my boots. The air smelled of wet leaves and moss, thick and heavy. I walked slowly. Every step sank slightly into the softened earth. The forest pressed in around me, branches reaching, bending toward the mist. Then I saw it, a vague humanoid shape emerging from the fog. It moved as I moved. Every step I took, it mirrored. I stopped. It stopped, my breath caught. The mist swirled around my legs, cold and sticky. I could feel the damp brushing against my skin, almost like fingers. I tried to step faster. It sped up, I slowed. It slowed, shadows twisted in the fog. They bent and stretched, unnatural, shifting with every blink. The forest seemed smaller, tighter. The trees leaned inward, pressing closer, patient. I swallowed. The damp air filled my lungs, icy and heavy. A faint rustling followed me, soft, deliberate, impossible to locate. The figure remained just beyond reach, tall, pale, silent. It had no face I could see, no features I could name. Only the imitation of my own movements, exact, relentless. I stepped sideways. It stepped sideways. I quickened my pace. It quickened too. The fog wrapped tighter, curling around my ankles, clinging heavy. I stopped again. Silence pressed against my ears. Even the rustling of leaves seemed distant. The forest itself waited, holding its breath. I could feel the damp fog against my arms and neck. The cold pressed into my skin. Every inhalation trembled. Every exhale caught in my throat. The figure lingered. Imitating, patient, unblinking. I took one last step forward. It matched me. Then slowly, the mist began to thin. The forest opened slightly, revealing empty trees and pale light. The shape receded, still mimicking from a distance. Soft footsteps faded into nothing. The air lightened, cold and clean, but the memory remained. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can feel it beside me, mirroring every movement, patient, silent, waiting. The night was still. The trees hung low, their branches heavy with mist. The air smelled damp, earthy and metallic, pressing against my skin. Then I felt it, a low hum vibrating through the air, soft at first, almost imperceptible, then deeper, seeping into my chest. I froze. The hum did not belong to wind or earth or any living thing I knew. It resonated, wrapping around my bones, filling my lungs. I stepped forward slowly. The mist curled around my ankles, cold and sticky. Every footfall was muffled, swallowed by fog and night. The hum shifted. It grew warmer, softer, almost intimate. Then it formed shapes, words I could not understand. But they pressed against my chest, heavy, familiar, impossible to ignore. I tried to move faster. It followed. The vibration pulsed with my heartbeat, sinking, echoing inside me. Branches scraped above. The fog twisted between the trees, curling like liquid smoke. I could feel it brush my hair, cling to my sleeves, damp and alive. I stopped. The hum became a murmur. Words rose and fell with a rhythm I could feel but not hear. Every syllable pressed into my ribs, soft, persistent. The mist thickened. Shadows shifted at the edges of vision. I could not tell where the sound ended or the fog began. It pressed close, intimate, like a presence breathing beside me. My own breath sounded loud in the quiet. I could feel the pulse of the earth through my boots, mingling with the hum in my chest. The fog clung to my arms, cold and clammy, almost sentient. I tried to step backward. The vibration followed. The words pressed against me, twisting inside, forming meaning I could not hold. The hum wrapped around my ribs, soft and heavy, insistent. A branch snapped somewhere behind me. The fog shifted, curling in sudden patterns. The hum remained, low and steady, filling every empty space. I shivered. The air pressed in, damp and metallic. I moved forward slowly, each step absorbed by mist. The words faded slightly, replaced by a deep vibration in my chest. I felt them echo in my bones, lingering long after I blinked. The fog thinned as I reached the edge of the clearing. The hum softened, retreating into distant vibration. The shadows remained still, quiet, patient. Even as I walked away, the feeling stayed. A resonance in my chest, a whisper I could not forget. Soft, persistent, waiting. The night was thick with fog. It hung low, damp and heavy, smelling of wet earth and decaying leaves. Every step sank slightly into soft, clinging ground. I walked slowly. The fog moved around me, curling like smoke with its own will. It brushed my face, cold and wet, tracing the edges of my cheeks. Shadows stretched in the mist. The trees leaned inward, pressing close. I could feel the damp curling around my legs, sticky, insistent. Soft rustling followed me. Not from wind, not from branches. Something unseen moved just behind me, patient and quiet. My footsteps were swallowed by the wet earth. Each soft squelch disappeared into the fog. The air pressed against my lungs, thick, suffocating. I paused. The fog swirled at eye level, pale and restless. It seemed to inhale and exhale with me, alive, waiting. A shiver ran down my spine. The damp pressed into my sleeves, clinging to skin. Every breath trembled in my chest, caught in the cold night air. I stepped forward again. The fog shifted with each motion, curling tighter, brushing, teasing. It felt like fingers slipping along my ankles, gentle but deliberate. I sensed it more than saw it. Presence. Silent, patient, following. Not behind me, not ahead. Everywhere at once, folding into the fog. The trees leaned closer. Branches scraped faintly against the mist. Every shadow moved subtly, twisting, bending, impossible to trace. I swallowed. The fog smelled sharper now, metallic and wet. Each inhale carried its weight, filling my chest with cold and heaviness. I tried to step faster. The fog thickened, slowing my movement. The unseen presence stayed, patient, ever near, soft and constant. I stopped. The world seemed to pause with me. Fog curling around my legs, pressing at my arms. The night held its breath. Then I moved again, careful, slow. The path beneath remained hidden in mist, each footfall muted, swallowed by damp earth. Every step reminded me I was not alone. By the time the fog began to thin slightly, I felt its lingering weight, cold, patient, alive. The presence remained, just beyond sight, pressing against memory. Even now, when the air is still, I feel it curling around me, soft, watching, waiting. The forest thinned ahead, revealing a faint glow. A small cabin sat in the distance, pale light spilling from its windows. The air smelled of damp wood and smoke long gone. I stepped closer. The ground was soft, clinging to my boots, muffling every footfall. The fog wrapped around the cabin like a veil, shifting, curling, alive. The door was closed. I could feel the cold emanating from inside, still and patient. Each step forward made the air colder, pressing against my skin. I pushed the door gently. It opened with a soft creak. Inside, the room was untouched. Furniture arranged neatly, silent, frozen in time. Shadows flicked along the walls. They moved, too quickly to be real, darting and curling in the corners of my vision. The air smelled sharper now, wood and cold metal pressing into my lungs. A voice whispered my name, soft, low, intimate. The room was empty. I stood frozen, breath caught in my chest. The floorboards groaned beneath me. The fog outside pressed against the windows, cold, curling around the frame. Every shadow in the cabin shifted slightly, patient, observing. I walked slowly between the furniture. Each touch met stillness. Every breath trembled. The voice repeated, closer this time, insistent. A chair creaked behind me. I turned, but it remained still. The glow from the windows stretched long shadows across the walls. They twisted, almost alive, reaching, retreating. I pressed my hands to the table, cold, smooth, silent. The whisper returned, carried in the air itself. I felt it brush against my chest, soft, intimate, impossible to ignore. The room felt smaller. The walls leaned inward. The shadows moved just out of focus, patient. I could feel them watching, breathing in time with me. I stepped back toward the door. The voice lingered, carrying a weight I could not shake. Regret pressed into my chest. The fog outside curled closer, brushing through cracks, cold and damp. Even as I left the cabin behind, the memory stayed. The pale light, the cold, the whisper. Patient, silent, waiting. The fog pressed close around the trees. The ground was soft, damp, heavy beneath my boots. The air smelled of wet leaves and earth, sharp and cold. Then I felt it. A breath, slow and warm, brushing the back of my neck. I stiffened. I was alone. I turned slowly. Nothing. Only fog curling between the trunks, pale and restless. Yet a shadow lingered just beyond sight. Patient. My footsteps sank into the softened ground. Every step echoed in the silence, swallowed instantly by mist. The shadow moved too, matching me, step for step. I tried to run. My legs refused, heavy, unyielding, rooted to the earth. The fog shifted, curling around my ankles. It pressed against my sleeves, damp, almost alive. Branches bent closer overhead, scratching faintly. The shadow followed without sound, not ahead, not behind. It existed with me, patient, silent, breathing. I swallowed. The air pressed in, thick and damp. Every inhalation trembled in my chest. Every exhale caught halfway, swallowed by mist. I stopped. The shadow halted as well. The fog wrapped closer, brushing against my cheeks. I could feel it pressing in, intimate, impossible to ignore. I stepped sideways, cautious, slow. The shadow mirrored me instantly. I quickened my pace. It quickened too, always matching. The forest seemed to close in. The trunks leaned inward, tall and silent. The mist twisted in the corners of my eyes, shifting with shadows unseen. I pressed my hands to my chest. The pulse rattled against my ribs, loud and insistent. Every heartbeat echoed, absorbed by fog, swallowed by the silence. I tried to breathe slowly. The warm presence at my neck remained, brushing softly, patient. Every step felt heavier, every movement mirrored. By the time I reached the edge of the fog, the shadow lingered at its threshold, watching, waiting, unmoving, yet present. Even now, when the night is still, I can feel it behind me, step for step, breath on my neck, silent, patient. The forest was quiet, damp with evening mist. The air smelled of wet moss and cold earth, heavy and still. My footsteps sank softly into the softened ground, muffled by fog. A pale light floated between the trees, faint, almost unreal, like moonlight woven into mist. It shifted slowly, changing colors, pulsing as if the moon itself was breathing. I stepped closer. The air felt cooler here, brushing against my skin, damp and alive. The fog curled around my ankles, soft and sticky, moving with the light. Symbols appeared on the bark of the trees, strange, intricate etchings pulsing faintly in sync with my heartbeat. Every pulse echoed in my chest, a rhythm I could not escape. The light drifted nearer. Its glow painted the fog in pale blues, silvers, and soft greens. Shadows bent unnaturally along the trunks, twisting toward the patterns, patient and quiet. I reached out. The bark was cold, rough, vibrating slightly beneath my fingers. The pulse matched the quickening of my own heart, steady and insistent. A rustling stirred in the branches. Not wind, not animal, only the soft disturbance of fog moving around me. It felt as if the forest itself was watching. The light swirled, drifting closer. It illuminated the symbols fully now, the lines deep, almost alive. I could feel them pressing against my mind, silent and patient. I stepped back. The pulse quickened, my chest tightening. The light slowed its drift, almost hesitant, waiting for me to move again. The mist clung to my sleeves. Every inhale carried the smell of wet earth and cold wood. The forest was silent, patient, holding its breath. The pale light hovered now at eye level. Shadows stretched, bending toward it, reaching, retreating. Every beat of the symbols pressed into me, faint, insistent, intimate. I could not look away. Every flicker, every shift of color pulled my gaze. The symbols seemed to breathe with me, echoing the rhythm of my heartbeat. I stepped forward cautiously. The fog parted slightly, brushing soft against my legs, alive in its movement. The light pulsed once more, pale and steady. The forest waited. Even as I walked away, I felt the pulse linger in my chest. The memory of the pale light, the symbols, the quiet breath of the forest, patient, watching, waiting. The fog hung low between the trees. The ground was soft, wet, and cold beneath my boots. Every step sank slightly, muffled by damp earth. Then I heard them. Footsteps, soft, deliberate. Matching mine exactly. I stopped. They stopped. I stepped faster. They rushed, keeping pace. The air smelled of moss and wet wood. A faint rustling followed, but no wind stirred. The forest pressed close, patient and silent. I turned my head. A pair of glowing eyes stared from the fog. High, pale, unblinking, watching, I whispered. Low, almost afraid to move my lips. My own voice sounded distant, strange, as if it came from far away. The footsteps followed, echoing, alive. Branches scraped overhead. The fog swirled at my ankles, damp and curling. I felt it brush my skin, soft and persistent. I quickened my pace. The footsteps matched, closer now. Every beat of my heart echoed in the silence. Every breath trembled in my chest. The glowing eyes shifted. They followed my movement, patient, unwavering. Shadows bent toward them, stretching and curling, impossible to track. I slowed, trying to catch my bearings. The footsteps did too. The forest seemed to breathe in time with us. The mist pressed closer, heavy and cold. I tried to look behind me. Only fog, only darkness curling around unseen trunks. Yet the sound persisted, echoing, alive, mocking. I stopped. The eyes lingered, pale and patient. The footsteps paused, waiting. The silence pressed, dense, a weight against my chest. I took a cautious step forward. The footsteps followed. The fog clung, curling around my legs, damp and alive. The eyes drifted closer, pale light in the mist. I kept moving, step by step, slow, careful. The forest closed in, shadows stretching with each movement. The echoing footsteps never left. Even as I emerged from the thickest fog, I could still feel them, matching me, following me, soft, patient, eternal. The fog thickened as I walked. Every familiar tree disappeared beneath a curtain of gray. The air smelled damp, cold, and sharp with moss. The path beneath my feet vanished. Soft earth gave way to nothing, swallowed by mist. Every step seemed uncertain, lost in the wet hush of the forest. I turned. Nothing familiar remained. Shapes I thought I knew twisted in the fog, trunks bending impossibly. Branches scraped against each other with a faint, eerie creak. I walked faster. The ground remained soft, pulling at my boots. The mist curled around my legs, cold and unrelenting. Every breath trembled, caught in the thick air. The forest seemed alive. Shadows shifted just beyond my vision, patient and still. The trees leaned inward, blocking what I thought was escape. I realized the path circled back on itself, endlessly, impossibly. Hours passed. Or was it days? Time lost meaning in the fog's quiet embrace. The air pressed close, damp and heavy, wrapping around my sleeves, chilling my skin. I stopped. The silence pressed in, dense and complete. No footsteps followed. No wind moved. Only the fog curling, patient and waiting. I tried to call out. My voice sounded strange, distant, swallowed by mist. No echo returned, only the wet weight of the forest. I moved again cautiously. Each step disappeared into the soft ground. The fog shifted with every motion, curling tighter, almost sentient. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the bent trunks, twisting with every blink. I pressed my hands to the nearest tree. Rough bark, cold and damp, grounding me for a moment. The pulse in my chest matched the rhythm of the fog itself. Slow, unyielding, patient. Every direction looked the same. Every turn led me back to where I had begun. The mist swallowed landmarks, paths, and the faint glow of moonlight. Isolation pressed against my ribs, heavy, unyielding. I breathed slowly, though each inhalation felt labored. The fog brushed my face, cold and wet, almost alive. The forest waited, patient, silent. Even as the path vanished completely, I felt it beneath me, soft and endless. The trees leaning inward, the mist curling closer, wrapping me in quiet, unbroken solitude. The forest was quiet, damp with evening mist. The ground smelled of wet earth and pine, soft beneath my boots. My footsteps pressed lightly into moss and leaf, swallowed immediately by silence. A small door appeared among the trees. Old oak, darkened with age, standing alone where no path led. The fog curled around its base, pale and restless. I stepped closer. Rustling came from behind it. Soft, deliberate, patient, I leaned forward. The door shivered. Then it opened on its own. Slowly. Inside was nothing. Only darkness, thick and complete. The cold air from within brushed my face, damp and alive. I felt it press gently against my sleeves. I hesitated. The rustling had stopped. Only the silence remained. Yet something watched me, eyes I could not see. Patient, unseen, waiting. I stepped back. The forest pressed closer, branches brushing against my hair. The smell of wet wood and earth intensified, heavy and lingering. I peered again. The door remained open. Shadows shifted just beyond the threshold, impossible to measure, impossible to name. A hum rose in the back of my mind. Not loud, not sharp. Soft, insistent, almost a pulse. The rustling began again. Not from the forest. Not from wind. It came from behind the door, careful, deliberate. I touched the handle. Cold, rough, alive under my fingers. The fog curled at my feet, moving as if in rhythm with the sound. I stepped back again. The door remained, patient and still. The darkness within seemed to breathe, slow, quiet, waiting. I turned, walking away slowly. The eyes followed, unseen but certain. The rustling continued faintly, echoing in my chest, in my bones. Even now I remember it. The door, the darkness, the quiet, unseen gaze, patient and unyielding. The fog lay thick between the trees. Each breath was damp, sharp, pressing against my lungs. The ground beneath my boots was soft, wet with moss and fallen needles. Shadows stretched and shifted, impossibly long. They whispered. Soft, deliberate, patient, I froze. The words were familiar. Voices I had thought forgotten, calling me closer, gentle, coaxing. I tried to move away. My feet did not obey. Step by step, I walked toward the sound, though my mind screamed to stop. The fog curled at my ankles, cold and alive. Branches brushed my face, scraping softly, wet with evening dew. The shadows shifted with each step, stretching, bending, alive with intent. The whispers repeated names I barely remembered. A laugh, soft and hollow, drifted through the mist. A sigh followed, close enough to feel on my cheek. I blinked. Shapes danced in my peripheral vision. Shadows mimicked me. Every movement, every pause. I tried to speak. Only a breath came. My voice felt distant, strange, and swallowed by the fog. The whispers moved with me. Closer now, echoing inside my chest. Every pulse of my heart seemed to answer them. The forest pressed inward. Branches leaned closer. Mist swirled around my face, damp and cold. The shadows reached, bending toward me without touching. I stumbled, barely catching myself. The voices laughed softly, echoing from every corner of the fog. They were patient, coaxing, aware of every trembling step I took. I stopped. The whispers paused, too. The fog hung still, heavy. The silence was complete but alive. A faint hum rose inside me, not sound outside, but deep, internal. The shadows waited. I waited. Even when I turned to leave, the whispers followed. Soft, distant, eternal. Shadows stretching into corners my eyes could not reach. The forest remained. The fog remained. And I felt their presence, patient, alive, unbroken. The fog clung to the ground, thick and damp. Each step pressed softly into moss and rotting leaves. The air smelled of wet earth and old pine. I returned to the crossroads, the one I thought I had passed hours ago. But it looked different now, older, decayed. Shadows stretched along splintered signposts. The ground seemed sunken, uneven, as if time had weighed it down. A figure knelt in the mist, head bowed, still, unmoving. I paused. The fog curled around my legs, damp and patient. The cold pressed against my skin. I stepped closer. The smell of wet wood and cold stone grew stronger. Each footfall disappeared into the soft earth. The figure did not move, not a twitch, not a breath, just the weight of presence. I reached out, though a part of me screamed not to. When I blinked, it vanished. No sound, no trace, only the fog swirling where it had knelt. A shiver ran through me. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. The air tasted faintly metallic, damp with forgotten rain. I turned slowly. The crossroads remained, empty, yet somehow alive. The shadows seemed to lean in, patient and still. The branches rustled without wind. A faint hum lingered, low and almost imperceptible. It pressed into my chest. Breath caught in my throat. I stepped back. The ground beneath me felt soft, giving, as if it might swallow me whole. The fog curled around my ankles, gentle, yet unrelenting. Even as I moved away, the memory of the kneeling figure pressed against my mind. Its absence weighed heavier than presence. The crossroads loomed behind me, waiting. The forest remained quiet. The mist thickened, and I knew I would remember. The figure, the stillness, the emptiness left behind. The field stretched before me, pale under the fog. Each blade of grass glistened with damp, catching what little light there was. The air smelled of wet earth and distant rain. A strange shimmer moved across the field, like the static of an old television, left on too long. Shapes flickered within it, half-formed, impossible. I stepped forward. The ground was soft beneath my boots, damp and giving. The fog curled around my legs, slow, deliberate. Shapes twisted and shifted in the fuzz. Sometimes human, sometimes not. They disappeared when I blinked. And yet, I felt their gaze, heavy and insistent. A cold wind passed. It carried voices I could not place, whispers that were almost words, floating just beyond comprehension. I froze. The air pressed close, thick and electric. Static seemed to hum in my ears, low and insistent. My heartbeat matched the flickering shapes. I moved again. Footsteps muted by soft, wet grass. The fog shifted with me, curling closer, brushing my arms and cheeks. Figures appeared at the edge of vision. Thin, elongated, impossible to focus on. Every time I tried to look directly, they vanished, leaving only the shimmer behind. The wind returned, carrying the faint hum of voices. A word, or something like a word, rose, echoing in my chest. I wanted to turn away, but my feet obeyed the field, moving slowly, hypnotically forward. The fog thickened, swallowing familiar shapes. Shadows stretched and bent, static dancing along the ground. The air was cold, damp, electric with anticipation. I blinked. The field was empty, yet the shimmer remained, pulsing softly, alive. A final gust of wind whispered through the grass. The voices receded, leaving only silence, but the hum stayed, low and constant, vibrating in my bones. I stepped back, and the field seemed to stretch farther, endless and still. The shimmer faded, but I knew it would return. I would remember it. The field that was alive with static, and the shapes that watched, always just out of reach. The forest was quiet. Fog curled low between the trunks, thick and damp. The air smelled of wet pine and earth, heavy and still. I walked slowly, each step muffled by moss and fallen needles. Branches leaned close, as if listening. The mist shifted around me, brushing my face. Then I saw it. A surface, suspended between two trees. Smooth, reflective. I approached. My own face stared back, but it wasn't the same. It smiled. A slow, curling smile that I had never worn. I froze. The fog curled tighter, hiding the forest beyond, trapping us together. I reached toward it. The air felt electric, almost warm against my fingertips. I wanted to touch, to confirm it was real. The smile widened, and my chest tightened. The forest held its breath. I stepped closer. The reflection moved with me, but not perfectly. It lagged, hesitated, then copied me too precisely. A subtle mockery, silent but impossible to ignore. The fog thickened again, coiling around my legs. I could hear my own breath, shallow and quick. The mirror pulled my attention, magnetic, almost alive. A branch brushed my shoulder. I jumped, heart hammering, but the reflection remained calm. Watching, smiling, waiting. I blinked. For a moment, the forest behind it seemed real. Then the fog swallowed everything. Only the smile remained. I tried to pull back. The reflection leaned closer, tilting its head in imitation. It mirrored my fear, my hesitation, perfectly. And yet, I knew. It was not me. A chill ran down my spine. The mist swirled, curling over the ground like slow, living fingers. I wanted to run, but the forest was silent, holding me still. I reached again, more cautiously this time. The mirror pulsed softly, pale light gleaming across the wet surface. The smile deepened, and I felt it. Watching not just with eyes, but with some quiet intent. A breath passed through the fog. Cold, but familiar. I stepped back. The reflection froze for a heartbeat, then smiled wider, unblinking. I tore my gaze away. The mirror remained, suspended, the fog hiding everything beyond it. I could hear the soft hum of the forest return, rustling leaves, distant snapping twigs, the quiet rhythm of the night. And yet the image lingered in my mind, the face that was mine, but smiling when I did not. The pull of it, subtle and insistent, like the fog itself was urging me closer. I moved on, feet heavy. The forest seemed unchanged, the fog curling and receding as I passed. But behind me I felt it still, the quiet, cold weight of eyes that were mine, smiling. I walked until the mist thinned, until the trees opened, and the mirror was gone. Yet the memory stayed, lingering in the chest, a quiet unease that would not leave. The fog lay heavy across the field. Cold and damp, it pressed against my skin. Each step sank slightly into the wet earth. I could hear it first. Breaths. Hollow. Matching my own, slow and shallow. I stopped. The fog shifted. Rustling leaves whispered beneath the weight of the mist. A cold finger brushed my arm. I jerked but saw nothing. Only the fog, curling and retreating, hiding secrets. The breaths continued. They rose and fell in perfect rhythm with me. I tried to listen to the forest beyond, wind snapping twigs, but everything was muted, distant. I stepped forward cautiously. The fog seemed to move with me, curling around my ankles. A shadow flickered at the edge of my vision. Gone before I blinked. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth. My heart thudded, loud in the silence. Each inhale felt mirrored. Each exhale returned hollow and cold. I looked around. Trees loomed like silent sentinels. Shapes twisted within the mist. I felt eyes, countless, unseen, watching me. Another brush against my arm. Colder this time. Impossible. I was alone. I whispered a name. The fog swallowed it immediately, then exhaled back at me. Hollow. Echoing. My breath quickened. The air vibrated with it. The fog shifted closer, curling around my face, around my chest. I shivered, feeling the pressure, the presence, breathing with me, always just behind. I tried to move faster. The footsteps on soft, wet ground echoed, but not mine. Soft, deliberate, always matching. A pause. The fog stilled, thickening. Silence pressed against my ears. Then the hollow breaths returned, closer now, intimate, whispering against my skin like someone was there. I turned, empty mist, yet the weight of those unseen eyes lingered. Every shadow seemed to twitch, waiting, curving closer with the fog. I wanted to run, legs heavy, body trembling, but the fog clung to me, soft, damp, alive. Another brush of cold, fingers grazing my arm. I spun. Nothing. The breaths slowed, stretching, deep, hollow, dragging into the forest. I felt pulled into them, my chest mimicking their rhythm without will. I paused again. Silence. The fog softened, curling away. Leaves rustled in the distance and the hollow presence receded as if satisfied for now. I breathed heavily. Alone, truly, this time. The fog hung like a curtain around the field, and though nothing moved, I could still feel it, watching, waiting, breathing just behind me, always matching. The fog pressed against my skin, damp and clinging. Every step sank into soft, wet earth. The forest seemed alive, leaning in, waiting. I stopped. The fog shifted. A shape halted, just beyond sight. Its presence pressed against me, suffocating. I moved again. It mirrored me, step for step. The forest itself seemed to bend for it. Trees curved, branches curling as if guiding it. I could hear leaves whispering, rustling, brushing against each other. My own breath quickened, loud in the stillness. The air smelled of wet pine, cold earth, and something else. Something waiting. I dared a glance. Nothing. Yet I felt its weight. Heavier than the fog, denser than the night. Every instinct screamed it was closer than I imagined. I tried to run, legs heavy, the ground soft beneath me, swallowing each step. The shape followed flawlessly, effortlessly. It knew every root, every stone, every twisted tree. I paused again. The forest stilled around me, but it did not. It hovered at the edge of my vision, just there, mirroring, waiting. The fog curled at my ankles, brushing my skin. A cold brush against my neck made me flinch. I spun, eyes darting, empty mist. Yet I could feel it, always there. Branches scraped against each other above me. The wind held its breath. I could hear my own heartbeat, thudding in rhythm with the shifting fog, and with each beat, I knew it watched. Every thought, every tremor, every falter, I tried to call out, voice caught in my throat. Silence swallowed it instantly. The figure moved with me, always just a step behind, yet when I tried to gauge the distance, it seemed closer than before. The forest was no longer my own. It guided it, hiding it, helping it follow. I stumbled over a root. The fog surged, curling like fingers. I felt it then, a pressure behind me. Not on the skin, but in the chest, a weight cold and undeniable, I whispered to myself. Nothing answered, yet the air vibrated. I could sense its gaze, cold, precise, unblinking, tracing my every movement. The forest seemed endless. Every path looped back, twisted unnaturally. I could not tell north from south, left from right. It moved with ease, knowing the secrets of each bend. I stopped again, shaking. Silence thick and choking. The shape froze, mirroring me. I felt the fog tighten around my shoulders. Eyes I could not see burned through me, and then, slowly, I realized it was patient. It would wait, for hours, days, or longer. It did not hurry. It simply followed. I breathed shallow, tasting damp leaves and wet soil. The fog twisted around me, soft but heavy. I could not move without it echoing me. I could not look without it noticing. The forest itself seemed a part of it, guiding it, shielding it, holding me in place while it studied. Always just beyond the corner of my eye, I tried to shake the thought. Alone. I was alone. But the pressure lingered. Heavy, silent, unyielding. Every instinct told me it would not leave. I took another step. It followed. Always following, the forest a maze I could not escape. The fog a cloak it used to move unseen, and I understood, finally. It was not hunting. It did not need to. It was patient, and I was trapped in its knowing. I swallowed hard, tasting the cold mist in my mouth. Breath shallow, every step mirrored. Every heartbeat felt against mine. The forest, the fog, the shape, all one, and still it followed. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Leaves lay still on the ground, heavy with dew. I stumbled over roots that weren't there before. The fog curled around me, thick, slow, like it had a heartbeat. Cold air pressed against my cheeks, damp and heavy. Then I saw it. A door. Old, splintered, leaning slightly to one side. Where there should have been nothing, it stood. Impossible yet undeniable, I reached out. Rough wood pressed against my fingertips. It hummed beneath my touch, vibrating softly. A smell of damp cedar and dust filled my nose. The fog behind it moved differently, alive, watching. I paused. My breath trembled in the cold air. I should step back, but I didn't. The handle was cold. The hinges groaned when I nudged it open. Beyond, a crossroad, not the one I remembered. Strange, old, forgotten. The fog swallowed the ground entirely. Every step into it sounded muted, distant. I felt it shift around me, brushing my skin. Something was here with me, or perhaps following. I stepped fully through. The door closed behind me with a soft click. It should have felt solid. Yet the fog hummed against my back, pressing in. Breath caught in my chest. The crossroads stretched before me, endless. Paths twisted into shapes I had no memory of. Trees leaned unnaturally, bark cracked and bleeding pale light. Every shadow seemed to move, stretching toward me, yet never touching. I swallowed hard. The door was gone, no trace. Only fog and the smell of wet earth, and the soft hum that vibrated through my bones. I wanted to turn back, but there was nowhere to go. The path I thought I had taken was gone. The forest had changed with my crossing, shifting, folding in on itself. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. The fog breathed around me, cold, wet fingers brushing my ankles. Every instinct told me to run, yet every step forward felt heavier than the last. I paused at the center of the crossroads. Wind carried whispers, distant voices, echoes of places I once knew. I tried to make sense of it. The fog swallowed everything else. The door had led me here. But to where? Regret settled like a stone in my chest. Every path looked familiar and alien at once. A low rustling came from behind a tree. I turned. Nothing, just the fog, moving, alive, watching. I touched the ground. Cold, damp, soft. The fog curled around my fingers, wrapping tight, as if measuring, waiting, knowing. I breathed shallow. Every sound of my own movement echoed strangely, like someone else was walking with me. A presence mirrored me. Silent, patient, unseen. I wanted to retreat. Step back through the door. But it was gone. And the crossroads stretched endlessly, a place that should not exist, shaped by something older than memory itself. I moved forward, step by step, the fog twisting, breathing, alive around me. Every step felt both mine and not mine. I realized then fully the door had not just opened a path. It had changed me, and whatever waited beyond the mist knew exactly where I would go next. I swallowed, tasting the cold, damp air. My own breath sounded foreign in my ears. The fog shifted again, and I walked on into a crossroads that should never have been. The forest was heavy with fog. Cold mist clung to my skin, soaking my hair. Branches reached across the path like skeletal hands. A faint light flickered ahead, soft, warm, yet trembling. A lantern, hanging low, swinging slightly in the wind. Its glow painted the fog in pale gold. I stepped closer. The air smelled of wet earth and burnt wood. Each breath came slow, reluctant. The silence pressed against my ears. Beneath the lantern, a figure knelt. Head bowed, shoulders shaking ever so slightly. The flame outlined its shape, casting shadows that stretched into the fog. I approached cautiously. The damp grass whispered under my feet. Each step felt louder than the last. As I neared, the figure disappeared. Only the lantern remained, flickering. Quiet. Smoke curled lazily from its wick. The smell lingered, sharp and familiar. And then even it was gone. I stood alone. The fog swallowed everything. Branches dripped cold moisture onto my shoulders. My own heartbeat sounded strange, distant. I tried to call out. My voice sounded hollow, as if it belonged to someone else. The mist pressed closer, tightening around my chest. Each inhalation was thick with damp, the faint smell of smoke still clinging. I knelt where the figure had been. The ground felt soft, almost alive beneath my palms. Every sense reached outward, listening, smelling, touching, but there was nothing. Nothing but fog. A low rustling came from somewhere unseen. Leaves shifting, or maybe footsteps. I froze. The sound receded into silence. The lantern's memory lingered. A warmth that was gone, a light swallowed by the mist. I could almost feel the figure's presence beside me, kneeling in quiet resignation. I walked onward. The fog trailed behind like smoke, wrapping my legs in cool fingers. Each step echoed softly against the damp earth. I wanted to see the light again, to understand it. But the lantern had vanished completely, and with it the sense of hope it carried. Only the forest remained. Shadows stretched and twisted. The silence grew heavier with every breath. My chest ached. Loneliness pressed deep into my bones. A faint smell of smoke lingered still. Sweet, acrid, and sorrowful. I closed my eyes, letting it fill me. The fog breathed around me, thick and constant. I continued walking. Soft footsteps on wet ground. The light was gone. The figure was gone. Only memory remained, fragile as the flicker of a flame. I exhaled. The forest did not respond. The mist clung tighter, and I kept moving, alone, through the endless gray. The fog was thicker here, heavier than anything I had walked through before. It wrapped around the trees, the ground, me. Every step I took sank slightly into the damp earth. The crossroads stretched before me. Paths faded into mist on every side. Shapes moved just beyond sight. They twisted, vanished, as if the forest itself was breathing. I stopped. A cold wind drifted through the branches. It carried faint scents of moss and wet bark, and something else. Something I could not name. Eyes. I felt them, everywhere, watching from the fog, from the shadows, from beyond the trees. Yet no one appeared. I took a step forward. Soft rustling came from the left, then the right. Leaves quivered under unseen weight. My heartbeat matched the pulse of the forest. The fog shifted, curling around my legs like liquid silk. The paths I had followed before were gone. Each turn led me back to the same point. The Crossroads. Endless, unyielding, I whispered a name. The air swallowed it. No echo. Only the damp smell of earth and the static taste of cold mist. I closed my eyes briefly, felt the fog brush my face, feel like breath against my skin. The trees leaned closer, silent, ancient. Their branches pressed like unseen hands. A shadow moved at the edge of my vision. Then two, then gone. I could not tell if they were real, or memory, or imagination. I stepped onto one path. It curved and twisted. The mist swallowed it quickly, folding it back on itself. I could no longer distinguish north from south. The forest had no exit. I realized it then, fully, quietly. No turning back, no escape. Only the fog, the cold, the soft echo of my own footsteps. A faint hum rose from the mist, low, almost imperceptible, vibrating through my chest. It carried neither sound nor meaning, yet it made me breathe slower, lean into the solitude. I sat on the damp earth, hands resting on wet leaves. The fog pressing closer, the shadows shifting without shape. Time seemed to stretch. Minutes, hours, days, I could not tell. Each blink was swallowed by mist. Each breath felt mirrored by the unseen forest. I let myself sink into it, alone yet observed, still yet moving through the fog. The Crossroads held me. A soft scent of pine and wet soil filled my nose. A faint metallic tang lingered beneath it. I did not rise. I did not call. I did not fight. I accepted it. The forest would not end. The paths would not lead out. I would remain, moving silently, step by step, through the endless gray. The fog pressed against my skin, soft, wet, constant. Shapes whispered in the periphery. Eyes watched. But I did not fear. I was part of the Crossroads now. Alone, observed, unmoving yet moving. A shadow among shadows, breathing with the fog. The forest inhaled. I exhaled, and the Crossroads waited.